So today's agenda, we're of course just going to be talking all about co-editing and the advancements around co-editing when it comes to Office documents. So today we'll cover a bit about what we are doing in terms of the increased file sizes that are now available for editing. We have a nice document to actually go over that was in partnership with Microsoft. And then we're going to basically create a shareable link directly from an editing session. So this is great to showcase if you're working on a document and you need to bring in one of your associates to start working on the document together. We're going to show an easy way to get that link across. And then we're going to showcase how to enable add a place in your local Office application. So if you're not familiar with that, this is basically how we communicate with your desktop application when it comes to things like Word, Excel, PowerPoint. There needs to be something what Microsoft calls a place, which is a way we can communicate again to ShareFile and to bring in those documents for editing. And then we're going to transition from web app editing to local desktop editing. So you might be familiar with starting an editing session within our web UI, but we want to showcase how to bring that editing session to the local desktop application. Again, say like with a Word document. And then we're going to open a ShareFile right from your local Office application. So that is basically, we want to show you how to open up an editing session, right from Office, so you could start working. So you don't necessarily need to go to the web UI to commence an editing session. You could do it all within, say, one of the Office applications that we're going to show you. And then finally, we're going to use ShareFile for Windows to enter an edit session seamlessly. So if there was already an editing session going on, you had an associate that was already opened in an editing session within Word, we're going to show you how we can join that editing session and start working with your associate. So pretty packed agenda, but let's get to it. But I believe I hit everything,
Awesome.
But I'll pass it over to Charlie.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. So today I'm going to walk you through real quick some of the increased file sizes that are actually available on all accounts today if you have co-editing. So some of the big changes, a lot of, being able to change for the future of, how files are getting bigger. There's more data that exists within those documents from what we used to have. So Microsoft Excel, right now we have basically a 10 times increase in what the file size was. There were limitations which led to a lot of people not necessarily using Microsoft Excel on the web because their files were just too large. So now we've been able to increase that from 5 megabytes to 50 megabytes for the maximum file size. Microsoft Word on the web has increased from 5 megabytes to 100 megabytes, allowing for some of those more complex and larger Word files to be able to be used. And then for the Microsoft PowerPoint on the web, it's increased. I believe it was actually from 25 megabytes. I think I may have had a typo in here and left the 2 off, but it should have gone from 25 megabytes to 300 megabytes for maximum file size. There are some, kind of like nuances about, the embedded file size. And these are really from the Microsoft side within their co-editing platform. But for embedded media, if you're including, MP4s or video files within your PowerPoint or audio files, there are some limitations about those embedded types that just exist on the Microsoft platform. There is a little bit of fine print where these file size apply to the web clients for Office. The desktop and mobile clients don't have these limitations, but you just need to be able to make sure that that you can download and upload those files within a 60-second period. Just note that extremely large files like it is big 300 megabyte or 100 megabyte files. If you have a low network bandwidth or other overall just kind of performance scenarios with your connection, you would just want to make sure you have a really good connection to be able to upload and download those files securely. So that really takes us into the next part of it, which is going to be a live demo. So what I'm going to be doing is walking you guys through really how the product works. So I've went ahead and signed out of most of my applications. That way I can show you, starting from scratch, how it's going to work. Let me find my mouse on the right monitor. Here we go. So one of the things we wanted to start with was really going into the web application and being able to show how to be able to create shareable links from our existing co-editing platform. So you'll go to your ShareFile account, you'll sign in. I use Okta or the single sign-on to get into the account. I click that. Looks like my request has expired because I had it open for too long, but as long as I click back, it should go ahead and take me in and kick me off another session. At this point, what I want to do is I want to go into one of my folders where I'm actually accessing some of these documents today. So I've got these client folders, some invoices, some project plans, and today I'm going to look at the Worldwide Co statement of work. And so to be able to get into this document, there are a couple ways I could be able to do it. I could right-click and edit to choose to edit that document, or I could be able to come over and click this edit button in this location. So once I click edit, this is going to take me into that live editing session. You'll note that it opens up this document in a new tab. So that way you can be able to start doing the work from there and close it when you're finished. You will see that there is a new button that's available for Open in Desktop. And we've also introduced a new way from within this platform that you can actually be able to share files from there. So when you click the share button, you'll have the ability to share and copy links. And what this will do is go ahead and open up that ShareFile sharing platform and allow you to be able to create links or send this document to specific people. So right now, this is kind of set for people can download the file. But what I want to do is, for this, maybe I want to share it with, one of my other presenters that's on this webinar. I can choose to allow them to edit this file. I want to set it so only employees can be able to use it. And maybe let's say, hey, we only want to do this for the next 30 days. And I want to be notified when they actually get in there and start editing the document. So I can now create and copy this link, copy it over, drop that link into a Slack thread or a Teams thread. I could be able to drop it into an email or just be able to share it in whatever way possible. At that point, the sharing is there. And, just like I created the link, if I send it to John, he would be able to enter in this session with me. And as you can see, his cursor is available right here. And then we should be able to just move around and make some adjustments. And so he and I will be working in real time on this and be able to make some changes. So what that does next is basically the steps of being able to open up in that desktop application where we actually want to start being able to transition from the web app into local editing. So the best way that I found is once you're in this editing section, you can choose to click Open in Desktop. We've actually got some, for the first time that you're doing it, or if you don't choose to not share this again, it's going to walk you through the steps of how to add ShareFile as a place. One of the requirements from Microsoft to be able to connect in with this co-editing platform is to actually integrate your local Office desktop application with a ShareFile integration. So, step one, open your desktop application. We'll navigate to the Open tab. On Windows, we select Add a Place. I think they called it something a little bit different on the Mac OS, which is Manage Storage Accounts. And then we'll basically select ShareFile and go through the sign-in process. If you want to learn more, we created some articles. If you're on a Windows machine, this link will point to Windows, which I'm on. If it's on Mac, it should go over to the Add a Place for Mac. It'll walk you through the steps of how to be able to do it. But I want to just show you an article. I want to show you in real time. So I've logged out of everything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to File and Open, which are the steps that we've created. We'll see this Add a Place functionality. So I'll choose Add a Place. And at this point, I can see a bunch of different providers. And the one we'll use today is that ShareFile. Once we reach the 100% on Monday, it should go ahead and start the process of talking to Microsoft about trying to change this around off of beta. And then at this point, we'll click Continue to log in. I'm going to choose Sign in with company credentials as I showed you earlier. It's going to take me through on the authentication screen. And since I'm logging in on a new browser, it's going to ask me for the two-factor authentication from my provider. Let me go ahead and verify that. And at this point, it should go ahead and pass me through. And now I'm going to have ShareFile connected as a place. So now I've authenticated in ShareFile. I can start seeing my personal folders, my shared folders, my favorites. And at that point, I've actually connected the Adaplex. So now I can be able to go back to this screen and say like, okay, cool. I've actually done all of these steps to get there connected. I could select don't show this again because I've already authenticated on this machine. And then at this point, I can choose to open in desktop. What this is going to do is say, hey, do you want to open up Word? I'll say, yeah, let's allow citrix.sharefile.com to do this. And we'll go ahead and say open. And at this point, it's going to go ahead and start pulling that file down into my native application. Enable editing because it's coming from the internet. I just want to make sure it's there. As you can see, we had John Bartel up here with his little picture. We've got me with my picture. And then very similarly, we can be able to see what was going on where, we folded right here. And then this allows us within the desktop application to continue being able to work on this document. If you think about Excel or PowerPoint, the ability to have, some of these applications saved on the desktop app just really help out because you can do a lot more. There's some more features and more functionality available within the desktop application, including some of those integrations or third-party applications that you've installed locally to make it work better. As you see up in the top left, we have AutoSave turned on, and this is being saved back to the ShareFile platform for this document. So every time that I make a change, if I want to highlight this, that change will save, and then it's going to be made available for John to be able to see on the other side. So now, when I go back to this application on the web, there are three options that I can choose for. I guess there is a link to learn more about how it's connected. This is really if you're having trouble to learn more about how to add a place. You could choose to say, hey, I want to continue editing on the web. I didn't mean to do the desktop. I could choose close document because everything worked. Or I could click try again that makes that call back to your local desktop application to try to open it up again. Since it worked for me, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and close the document. I can go back and continue working on this document locally with everything that I'm doing with John from here. So that's going to be the way to be able to enable out of place. We walk through the transition from the web app editing to that local desktop editing. So that's going to be the real key is when you click on edit, the ability to see that open in desktop button in the top right is what you need. The great thing, especially if you use Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, and Microsoft PowerPoint, is that you have the ability, once you connect into one of the applications locally, it's a shared authentication across all three of those tools. And so if you sign in on Word, it's available on Excel and PowerPoint. If you sign in on PowerPoint, it's also available on Excel and Word. And then put basically one sign-in for all three applications. So what we also want to do is to talk about the open a share file right from your local Office application. So I'm actually going to choose a bit of a different file that John isn't currently editing right now. And so this is going to go back to after I've already connected this application. Maybe I don't want to go to the web. Maybe I'm staying directly from Word, and now I could just choose to open a file. At this point, I can go to the ShareFile Beta and click on this as a location, similar to how you browse for a local file, where you reference it over on, if you have like a local SharePoint site or something else. You can go to this folder that I'm sharing with Laura, another one of our panelists, and maybe I want to select the client review agenda. At this point, without even having to go to Word, it's going to open up this file, the ShareFile website. It's going to go and open up this file. You can see that we've got John, who's already made some comments on this. And so he said, great first revision. So we can go through, take a look at this, make some edits. The AutoSave is turned on. It's being saved directly to ShareFile. And the changes I'm making are pushing back. And this allows me to be able to go ahead and choose ShareFile as that kind of a virtual drive within Microsoft Office to be able to connect into those files that I need and quickly access favorites or files that I'm working on. One thing to note is that this does when you're choosing to open up a new file from here, it's only going to give you a view of the type of files that you can open up with this application. So for instance, if we go to the actual folder where this lives, there's a PDF file that's also in here, and then there are 4 Word documents. From the Office view of Microsoft Word, there are only 4 types of files that we can open. We can't open up the PDF within it, but all of the Word documents that were in there are shown here as an option. If you opened up in PowerPoint and you had only 2 PowerPoints in this folder, that's what would show. So that really allows you to be able to choose the type of files that you can open up from that folder. So if for some reason you're like, hey, this isn't all the files, the reason is because it only shows what you're able to open up from the application and not a bunch of extra files that would not open through the Microsoft integration. So the other piece that's also there is the ability to leverage your local S drive. So let me close out some of these documents just to make sure that I'm not opening up the same document twice or having it look a little weird. But now that I've left those editing sessions locally, I'm going to leave them also virtually, so that way I'm not connected. Let me go back to my favorites, and that should clear out any of those sessions. What we want to show is the share file for Windows, which a lot of people may call the S drive. Previously, we had called it Citrix Files for Windows, but it just went through a brand change and a rename over to ShareFile for Windows. So you'll notice that you'll have your ShareFile S drive here. You've got all of your different files and folders, your connectors from this application. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that client alpha folder that I had with those 5 documents. As you can see, this file is actually checked out right now. This is actually checked out because it's a live editing session that John's currently in. So directly from my S drive, without having to choose to edit this file, the share file for Windows application already knows that I have add a place added. So I can be able to click on this file. It's going to go ahead and start opening and processing that document. And it's going to take me directly, well, it should take me directly into it, because this is a read-only folder. I may have not signed out properly from here. Let me try one more time. Sometimes with a live demo, things don't work every way that I want it to, but it looks like on this other file, it should be doing it. I'm not sure why that other one didn't do it. Maybe it's because John had checked it out in a different way. But as you can see, this is taking me directly into the editing section. John should be, from his side, able to log into the client review agenda and start editing this document along with me. So I can be able to come, say, overview of the presentation. And then, Laura, you may want to edit this back for some of my changes that I'm making. And maybe I'll add a comment that says this is not necessary. May want to remove this, Laura. And then at this point, I can be able to comment to her, and she'll be able to come back in and change it. John's going to be leading the financial goals review. But this allows us to be able to get into these editing sessions directly from the S drive, just making it overall easier to be able to collaborate with other employees at your company, external users who have access to this. And looks like John's going to take this edit, which is huge. So these are really the steps in the demo that we wanted to walk you through to give you an idea of how this works. The same thing is going to reference, and let me just give it a try. Sometimes opening things in different folders or something I haven't prepared for. Oh, that was the wrong click. Here we go. But maybe I wanted to open up, see if I have a test folder that I can use. I was going to try to open up a PowerPoint to kind of show how that works. Looks like I've got a lot of PDFs. Let me go through and try to find some test files that I have. Here we go. I've got this best PowerPoint presentation ever. I think it's got some GIFs and some other things in it, but I can be able to click on this. Looks like it chose to open up on my other screen, which is a little bit difficult to do, to drag over. But that just allows me to be able to go and enter in that session directly from the S drive and be able to operate.
It looks like Tony asked about was the actual listing of the shared folders is just listed as folders right now. So I've seen that kind of come across
Yeah.
too as well. Instead of it saying shared folders, it just says folders for now. And if I'm not mistaken, Charlie, I think they are going to change that a bit later on, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yep, I'm going to give a super nerdy answer to it, only because that's kind of what it, I guess, the reasoning behind it. So in our API for these shared folders, it's the root. Previously we had called it, I think 6 or 7 years ago, we called it My Files and Folders. That was really just a display name. The new display name that we changed it to a few years ago is shared folders. But in the back end of our API and really at our platform, it was just called folders. So Microsoft is currently inheriting just the raw name of it called folders. We're working to be able to update on the back end, but want to make sure that that change doesn't cause any impact to customers. So we're making sure we do our due diligence before changing it to be able to reference folders here. But as you can see, when I click on folders, it's going to load up and folders not available. I'm also a super user on a really big account, so that could be what's going on. But it's going to load up all of my folders and all of the assets that would exist on here. And so basically allows us to be able to access those same shared folders, which you would just access it from here.
Yeah.
It looks like Kamala had asked a question, which was, I tried adding a place in Word and didn't see ShareFile as an option. How do I get there in order to select it? So what you would want to do is when you get into the add a place in Word, there is one thing that you'll just need to be able to check. And this is, see if I can be able to show it under account, is under About Word, there is a channel that is required for this. So Microsoft has rolled out updates on their Office applications. They have, and this is, again, it's kind of going to be a little bit of a technical response, but they have a couple different versions of Office that they roll out to customers. They have the beta version, which is really that gets all the updates before it gets released. They have something called Current Channel. And Current Channel is as soon as that finishes beta, it then goes through and all of those updates and changes get applied to that. So most people on Current will be on that latest build. There's the monthly enterprise channel, which gets those updates every month on a certain date that Microsoft does it. And then the last one, which is the one that kind of lags behind, it's called the semi-annual enterprise channel. That is updated every 6 months. And so the changes that will be impacted should go in there. You will need to make sure that you do have the correct type of license that will enable this. It does require a Microsoft Business license to be able to view it. So if you are on a free version or a lower kind of personal version of Microsoft Office, that could be the reason that you may not see it. This is, again, a Microsoft limitation on who's able to use their co-editing suite, and really tied to the feature matrix of Office 365, as opposed to how ShareFile works. But you would just want to make sure that you're on the monthly enterprise channel or the latest version. If you don't control that yourself, you may need to reach out to your administrator of your account to be able to see if they can get you on the latest version of the Microsoft Office channel. And sorry for the super technical, nerdy response, but kind of what it is. So.
Yeah, and I think also, Charlie, it looks like there's a couple questions around Mac users and how this interfaces with their Mac. Of course, on the Apple side, how we are kind of jointly releasing some of these updates for the Mac version and the Windows version, and how we're going to see that in the future.
Yep, great question. So right now, it actually works on Mac OS. So let me pull up the URL to give you a view of how to connect it on Mac, and take off the place. Do some quick edits because I know this address by heart. So you have the ability to add a place to the Office application. Again, it really relies on the version of Office that you're on. But as you can see, if you go down to the Open on the Microsoft application, you can be able to go in and zoom in a little bit. So that way, if you have bad eyes like me, you can see it. You can be able to choose to manage storage accounts. It's going to pop up with different options that you have to add storage, and you should be able to see ShareFile Beta if you're on the correct version of Microsoft Office. At this point, you would select it, very similar to how you saw me log in on the Windows side. You should put in your subdomain or your account URL, depending on how you call it, which is typically like mycompany.sharefile.com. For my personal account, it's charliebrinson.sharefile.com. I then enter in my username and password to be able to log in. And then at that point, I should be able to see that I've connected a storage account here. I've got my favorites, my folders, which is shared folders, personal folder, or shared folders, or my files and folders, like I mentioned before, and then personal folders. And then at that point, you can be able to connect it. We also included, if you want to be able to disconnect the share file from out of place, if you logged into the wrong account, maybe you're a client user on a different ShareFile account and you use the wrong credentials, this would give you the steps to be able to log out and then log back into the account for the files that you want to be able to access. Right now, the ShareFile for Mac application, which is the S drive or the downloaded version, we are still working to get the integrated quick open from ShareFile for Mac, like I showed on ShareFile for Windows. That is slated on the roadmap and a feature that we are pushing for and actively developing. So that should be coming out in a very, very close future release. The date is still TBD, but as soon as we get more information, we're going to be posting it in the What Went Live notes and the release notes for the ShareFile for Mac application. So stay tuned. You can also subscribe to ShareFile release notes if you want to get updates on everything in the What's New section. And this allows you to be able to, there was a subscribe button, but it's on the RSS feed over here. And then this gives you updates about the new ShareFile for Mac. You can learn more about what went in there. You can download it from here. Updates to the migration tool, basically everything that we've leveraged, including the new Gmail plugin, which I just want to give a little shout out to Subhashini on this one. If you leverage Gmail, this is a great new tool that just got released a few days ago. It's instead of being just a Chrome extension, it allows you to be able to work across all Gmail applications to be able to send and receive secure files directly from there. So sorry for the sidetrack there, but just wanted to give a nice little shout out to the release notes and Joe, who's doing a great job keeping these updated, and then for Subhashini on the Gmail release.
So this is a very interesting question because I think this does come up quite a lot, and I believe our document does cover this. But one of Michael's questions were around if a client requires Office 365 to be able to edit that. And if I'm not mistaken, Charlie, seems that we just, as the employee that is commencing that edit, and say if I share a document with a client and I choose that edit option when I'm doing that share link, me as the employee should be the only one needing the Office 365 account. The client necessarily shouldn't have to. Is that correct still?
In the current state of things, that's how it works. With changes to partnership, some integrations, that could be something that may come down the road where Microsoft does require that the client user needs to authenticate their own licenses. But I believe in the current state, Michael should be able to share a link with a client. As long as they can log into ShareFile at the current moment, they can be able to get in and edit on the web application. And it would depend on if they're able to use that local desktop application to be able to do this.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, hopefully that stays the same, but certainly with Microsoft changes and our changes, I'm sure we'll update documentation as, of course, that changes. And another one came in from Jad, and they asked about adding multiple ShareFile accounts. I'm pretty sure right now as well, it's just one single ShareFile account, but do we have any insight of being able to add multiples down the road?
Great question, Chad. Right now, that is currently a request for enhancement that we have in the system. With the authentication options and really how we connect in on a account by account level, it does require you to, if you're signed into one account and you want to access a different account to edit, you would need to log out and then log back into that other account with the correct credentials to be able to continue editing from there.
Yeah.
So right now it is not possible to log into multiple accounts at the same time, but that is something that we have, or that we're investigating to try to figure out if there are options to be able to allow, the ability for multiple accounts.
Yeah, I think that'll be a great advancement because
Um,
since we always tend to have multiple ShareFile accounts, it does lend way to an awesome integration.
Absolutely. And I see a message from Brian in here as well. So Brian, good to hear from you, man. Hope all's well. He had a question about how does this work through Teams? And he and I have had some conversations around the integration for Teams and how this works. We're currently working to try to figure out, the state of the Microsoft Teams integration. There were some changes that happened earlier this year around the architecture that required us to sunset the Teams integration. We're looking at trying to bring that back. I've had some conversations with Pedro, who's one of our product managers, about what steps we need to be able to do, the new architecture, and trying to bring in some of that same functionality that we had. And in hopes that would be able to allow us to potentially be able to do some co-editing things from other parts of ShareFile. Right now, it's mainly the ShareFile for Windows, that desktop tool, and the web app. But we have things on the horizon, like our new projects integration, to be able to co-edit from there. You can actually start a co-editing session from Podio, which is a pretty cool option. I probably am not going to be able to show that on this call because I don't think I have it set up on my test account. But you can be able to kick something off directly from the Podio application into an editing session. But for Teams, those are things that we're working on, and we have these things in the bucket of items that we want to do. We just don't currently offer it right now. I did see Leah has a great question here, which is really tied to the weird scenario that we had brought up earlier when we go to open and view folders. This was my very nerdy conversation earlier where I was talking about the backend API and how it really shows folders as the raw view. And she was asking in Excel on the hyperlinks if the full URL or the file path would change because a lot of it is like shared with me /folder a /file name dot extension. It shouldn't be changing the names at all. Really, what we're going to just be doing is changing how Microsoft views that endpoint. Instead of viewing it as folders, we want to have it show shared folders, or if it shows up for you guys, shared with me. So however it would show up in the web application is how we plan for it to show up there. We're just making sure that before we push out a change and say, hey, this is what we want, let's go and push it out. Scenarios like yours to avoid a current workflow that you have of changing it. We don't want to change any of your hyperlink issues that you would run into. So we're making sure we try to cover our bases and make sure that you guys don't have an experience change when we do that, which is why it's taking a little bit longer than I planned to be able to get it back to being called shared folders or shared with me, depending on what it is in your web app experience.
That's a good response.
So it looks like David has a question on, does this work in hybrid environments? For example, he has some individuals who use Office 365, while a majority use on-prem versions of Office. So really, it's going to boil back down to the type of Office that they're on. Honestly, from a ShareFile perspective, we really we do care, but I'm going to say we don't care what version you're on, but we really only care if you can be able to add a place. So as long as, since I'm already connected, it doesn't show up. As long as you can go to add a service, storage, and enable ShareFile here, it should be able to work for those users. It really depends on what version you have for the on-prem version of Office and for the Office 365 version. We've got a list on our documentation page about, see if I can get to it real quick to show you guys. Our documentation is at docs.sharefile.com. You can go to the edit files. Actually, I'm sorry, it's co-editing. We've got two different things, but it walks through the supported Microsoft Office 365 plans. We've linked out to the plans that are required for this functionality, some of the different user requirements. Just note that there is one older thing that I noticed this morning as I was updating it, which was due to Microsoft Office Online limitations, the Excel files less than 500 are there. I've already submitted something to our documentation team to update this and to remove this limitation. Now that we've updated all the file sizes for Excel up to, give me 2 seconds to I think it was to 25 megabytes. No, it's 50 megabytes. We just double check my thing. Yeah, from 5 megabytes to 50 megabytes as the maximum file size that you can use on Excel.
If you would have to create a share to send to somebody to edit that document in particular, more so, if somebody wasn't realizing you were editing a document within that folder and they just opened it, what other ways can we confirm how we can actually share and edit and know that people are editing live?
Got it. That makes sense. So yeah, we have a couple different ways, and honestly, they're the two recommended ways are going to be to either create a folder and to apply that document, or sorry, upload that document in the folder and give the user access to this folder. For instance, I've got John and Laura. While they are other Citrix users on this folder, we could be able to give an external user access to this folder, or a client user. We want to make sure that they have download and upload permissions. That basically allows them to download, to view the file, and then as they make changes, to upload that file and then be able to apply those in it. So you don't have to give them delete permissions to do this editing, and they don't need admin, but it just gives you a good way to be able to provide them the access they need on a folder level. At that point, when they come in, if somebody's editing a file, they could be able to see that these documents are currently editing, and this tooltip could be showing up. Hover back over it again. Let me see if I can zoom in. I don't think it's going to make it any bigger if I do it. Nope. But it basically says this file is checked out at this time at 4:59, which doesn't seem right unless it's doing a weird time zone. But the file is currently being edited. But this other one is, edited. I need to go back and check on this time. It's showing 4 hours ahead of time or 5 hours ahead of time. But it's saying that the file is currently being edited. The user can be able to come here and choose to edit the document if they have the permissions to do so. It takes them into that document to be able to edit. The other thing you could do is be able to right-click on the file and go to Share. And what this will do is allow you to be able to create a share for this particular file. So it can be able to go and choose an editable share, which allows people who have access to this link to be able to do it. You want to make sure, because we actually require users to sign in to be able to edit. So that way we know who they are. We know that they're uploading and downloading files, and it gives us an audit trail of those users. You want to select clients and employees, so that way the user can be able to sign in. And then you can be able to choose, how long this file is there. And then at this point, you can be able to create and copy this link, or you could choose to email it to them directly. So if you only want one person to have it, it would be a custom link to their email. I would select my user, and then at this point, I could be able to send this file over to, search just popped up there, but I could be able to send this over and type in a message. And then at this point, the recipients can edit this document after signing in. And from there, they would get a link similar to this. They click on it, and then they start editing it. But that's pretty much how it works. So there was a question from Cheryl, which was, can you speak to security? For example, sending a social security number or other information through Excel format using this method. Just from a recommendation standpoint on social security numbers and other personally identifiable information, my recommendation would be to not do that. I would try to keep that as contained as possible. We do encrypt all the files and everything that's being shared. When it comes to personally identifiable information, a lot of that in the content that you have in ShareFile, you just need to make sure that you're following your own policies as a company about how you're putting those documents on cloud storage. But if you are currently sharing those through ShareFile and you have that functionality, or you have that, I guess, agreement within your company, and you've gone through and done the due diligence on what you need, the question is really up to you. But as far as encryption and security, fully covered, same way that it's been from the ShareFile perspective. You just need to understand and, I guess, determine on your own if that's okay with your company to be able to put those types of things into a file on ShareFile and share it out this way. But the same permissions, and I guess technically it's called ACLs. It's like an access control list that we have on like permissioning within ShareFile. We have the ability to lock it down to only those users and maintain, that permissioning, so you can be able to maintain your own control and meet your due diligence. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thank you everyone for your time, for coming. We appreciate it if you're on the East Coast spending your lunch with us, or if you're in other geos spending whatever time in the morning or the afternoon or evening to be able to walk through it. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, so I can feel like a social media influencer by saying that. But appreciate everyone's time.
Charlie's the mayor of ShareFile, so I'm certain you'll get likes from this. But yes, just like ditto of what Charlie said. Thank you all for joining. Take a look at our YouTube page, and definitely take a look at our events and webinars page as well. So thank you very much, everybody, and everyone have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.